Hey everyone, I'm back and I have a special review for you today. I took a little break off. Thanks for all the new followers. I have something incredibly special for you. I've been using this thing for about a month now, and I think it's about time we brought back some of the old man reviews. So I've got my cardigan on. Let me put my glasses on here so I can see what's going on with these young whippersnappers, what they're using today. And let's unbox this baby and see what's inside. Do you want to see what's in the box?
What's in the box?
You want to see what's in the box?
What's in the box?
All right, let's find out. We're starting to see more micro or mini style arcade sticks. We've seen a couple over the last month, and one of the more impressive ones that we've seen is from a Paradise Arcade Shop, and they have released what's called their MPress. So capital M, capital P, R-E-S-S. It's a new acrylic stickless controller. It comes in about 1-inch thick, so it is incredibly small, and it weighs just about 4 pounds. So it's really meant for travel. So you can easily kind of slide it in a backpack and take it anywhere with you, but it doesn't compromise so much that there's not enough room for your hand or for your wrists on the actual controller, which can sometimes be a problem with incredibly, really small, like homemade sticks. Each MPress is built with a Brook USB, MX switches, and a USB-C connection, which I think is great. I'm glad they're adding USB-C. And Paradise Arcade provides a very long, nice braided cable. What's innovative about the controller really isn't just the size, even though the size is incredible. It's small, but it's still easy to use, and still feels like it has some weight to it, so it's not too small. But the acrylic body design and thinness, which is the way that they've layered it, is really fascinating. But also the fact that the Brook USB and the MX switches are soldered to the large board that is kind of sandwiched in between the acrylic pieces. This allows the MPress to have such a small form factor. The controller breaks down really into 5 parts, the actual body of it. You have the top acrylic piece, then you have a kind of smaller acrylic lining underneath that, which provides some separation between the top acrylic and the board. Then you have the actual soldered board with the switches and the Brook USB. Then you have another slim acrylic lining underneath that, and then finally the bottom acrylic. The case has rounded edges, and the bottom acrylic even has threading, so that way if you want to, you can add feet to the case. In my case, I didn't feel like it really needed it. The slim acrylic also helps alleviate some pressure on top and bottom panels. The acrylic lining helps alleviate some pressure from the top and bottom panels hitting that board. But it also means that you can add custom artwork, which is great. I think it's something that we didn't really expect to have happened in these micro boards. I think everybody kind of expected that they were just going to be built, the cases were going to be kind of standard, and there wasn't really going to be room for this type of artwork customization. But what's great about those little pieces is that you can actually get a top layer of artwork, but you can also get a bottom layer of artwork. And we're already starting to see some designs. Johnny Fraze has made one that he just posted on Twitter, and I'll link to it down in the description below so you can kind of see his artwork and how he did it with the MPress. It looks incredible. A word of warning though, if you do take apart the stick, even if just to add the custom artwork, be careful, because everything is soldered to the board. It means any damage or any extra pressure to the board can affect the operation of the stick or the stickless controller. For example, if you're going to remove the plungers and the caps from the MX switches, be sure to use a flathead screwdriver to hold the switch down onto the board. Don't press too hard, just kind of put it there to hold it there, and then pull the plunger up and off. If you kind of just pull on the plunger itself, you can risk damaging the switch from its solder point on the board, which of course then means you really wouldn't be able to use that, and you'd have to resolder a new switch down. Also, when reassembling the case, it's critical that you carefully set all the pieces back into place and make sure all the acrylic is aligned before tightening the case again. This is really important. Too much pressure can cause the plungers to stick, and in my case I had the board stop working for a little bit until I realigned the acrylic, because I had tightened it too hard and I had misaligned the top left hand piece of acrylic, the thin piece of acrylic. that was underneath, and it was pressing too much on the board. So these are just things to kind of be careful of. The button layout is the standard stickless. It has a nice top row of function buttons, including a touchpad button, an L3, R3, home, select, and start. There's even a switch on the top back of the controller that disassembles the top row, which is great for tournaments and making sure that you don't accidentally hit an input. So you can just flip that switch and it cuts off that whole top row, which is incredible. I actually really like it when controllers implement something like this. Even better, Paradise lets you customize the type of switches. At least they did when I bought it. On the website now, they were just showing the MX Red switches, but I was able to put on some blue switches when I ordered mine. The color, you can even customize the color of the MX plunger caps, and even the color of the PCB board, which is incredible. I bought it in the black because I liked it, and at the time they only had black and white available, and I liked the black better. But now they have white, black, a gorgeous red, purple, and blue, and each one of them looks fantastic. The board it looks great no matter what, especially with the solder lines. So there's plenty of customization. While it's not the smallest device to be released recently, that would be the Junk Food Arcade's Snack Box Micro. Review coming in a couple of weeks. I ordered one for batch 2, should hopefully start shipping in the middle of March, and as soon as it does, I'll make sure to update and give a review. But for right now, when you first get this in your hands, the MPress, you do immediately kind of realize how small and light it is compared to other sticks. There's enough weight though with the MPress that you don't feel like it's too small, which is great, because I think some of the concerns so far that I've seen with the Snack Box Micro from Junk Food is that it was too light and it kind of slides around and moves everywhere. And in fact, they have added the option of buying a metal plate bottom to add, so you can add weight to it. This one, because it's right around 4 pounds, it kind of feels perfect. It's heavy, you can feel it. It doesn't really slide around that much. Even though the bottom is acrylic, you would think it would slide around, but for me, it really doesn't. It kind of fits perfectly right in the middle of my lap, although I'm kind of a bigger guy, so it just kind of maybe sets in my lap better. But the weight feels nice, and the acrylic feels great. Personally, I love acrylic cases, so the MPress feels very good to me. It has rounded edges, and while using it on a desk or somewhere where my wrists are kind of setting on it and on the case, I don't feel like it's digging in to my skin at all. The switches feel great. I like my switches tactile. I can't help it, I'm just that kind of guy. I like a clicky switch, even in a controller. But the MX plungers are where my heart sinks a bit. So I'm just going to say this, Paradise, I love you guys, but I fudging hate the MX plungers. I really do. I really do. I know, like, I'm happy that you designed them, because of course it's good to have options for the caps for these type of switches and not just for SAM and other buttons. So I'm glad that they're there. I just don't particularly like them very much. I've used them before, and so I kind of knew what I was getting when I was getting the MPress, because they were using those MX plunger. But it's just that the plastic feels more malleable and not as hard as maybe like a traditional Sanwa plunger cap. And so when you're pressing, the plungers just kind of feel like they move a little bit and they flex a little bit more, which I don't particularly like. And then when I'm in the heat of a match, it kind of really throws me off a little sometimes, just because of the way that I'm feeling with my fingers on the plungers and on the tops. The second thing is that the plungers themselves sit high on the board. Well, they stick up past the acrylic a little bit more than I would like. So like on a traditional Sanwa, or say the traditional hitbox, I can kind of get away with sliding my fingers back and forth, doing like an SPD with Zangief. I can slide my fingers back and forth and do it very quickly. But you really can't do that. You have to be very careful of your presses, and you really have to, like, your mind has to be set on what exactly it is you're pressing. Now this is where, even though I don't like the plungers, and I don't like them to be as high because I'd really like to slide my fingers around the way I'm used to, I will admit that because I have to be very conscious of the presses, I have dropped fewer inputs. So this is sort of my gripe with the plungers, but it doesn't mean that that's going to be everybody's experience. I wish they were a little bit harder. Honestly, this is a fantastic choice for anybody who wants a universal controller. Yes, there are still some of us who play on the Xbox, and I think I personally like the universal controllers the best because I don't like to have to switch back and forth, just because I'm using a different system. And it feels great to have a premium controller choice on the Xbox, especially for fighting games. So that's great, and I even use it on the Switch sometimes. And for anyone who doesn't really want a large or heavy stick, especially if they're resting their laps for a long time, this is great. It, like I said, it still has enough heft to it that it feels good, but it's not heavy enough to where you're really going to notice it after a long time. In fact, after a month of heavy use with the MPress, I can honestly say this is the stick or controller that I grab to play any fighting games. I've really stopped using the Quamba and other sticks, and I've really kind of kept this. That's how much I like it, even with the issue about the plungers, and even with how careful you really have to be with sort of taking apart and modding, and the lack of modding, right? Because you really, if you want to do anything, change out the switches, things like that, you'd have to solder, right? So that's something you'd have to know. The MPress comes in at $225, so it is not cheap. But the form factor and the universal board, I think, are absolutely worth the price. And I think now, from what I see from Paradise Arcade's tweet in their shop, is that they're adding a choice for hot swap sockets for an extra $25. And that's a great idea, and I'm glad that they're doing that. For the level of customization and the acrylic design and the thinness, and including the universal fighting board, the MPress is my top choice right now. If you're going to invest in something that you want to kind of have with you for a long time and travel with quite often without having all the unnecessary bulk, even though other controllers are getting thinner, I still would say this is probably a good bet right now. So I would say 8 out of 10. The design and everything they've been able to do with the solder board, I think, is impeccable. And if they just, I think, got some better MX caps and plungers, then it'd be 10 out of 10, right? Maybe 9 out of 10 just because of how careful you have to be with it, because if you do break the board, you're kind of screwed, right? So that there is that. Although I'm not heavy-handed, I don't throw my stuff around, so I'm not really worried about that, especially now that I can carry it in a backpack, and I don't have to put it in a checked bag if I travel. Then I'm not really worried about it. But so for this review, I'd say 8 out of 10. If it's something you wanted to pick up, and we'll wait for the next review, or maybe I'll change my mind and go with the Snackbox Micro once I get that and do a review. Who knows? All right, see you next time.